Hello everyone, welcome to CAP 5415 Computer Vision. My name is Yogesh Rawat and I will be your instructor for this course during this semester. This is the first lecture, and in this lecture we'll try to give you an introduction to computer vision. And in the first module, we'll talk about some of the basics. Let's first try to understand what exactly is computer vision. So computer vision is the ability of computers to understand and interpret visual data. By visual data, we mean images or videos where visual information is present. And with this visual information, we want to automate some tasks which are actually very easy for human visual system. For example, if we look at this image, as a human, we can easily say that what different objects are present in this image. So we can say that a laptop is there, there is a mug, there is a chair. And apart from that, we can also localize where exactly these objects are present in this image. So in computer vision, what we want to do is we want computers to solve these kind of problems for us automatically. Now, before we go into the basics, let's first try to understand what are the other research areas which are relevant to computer vision. In the Venn diagram shown here, you can see that computer vision is at the center, and we have a lot of other areas which are like coming from biology, computer science, mathematics, and physics. So we can see that computer vision has some overlap with neuroscience, cognitive science, algorithms, information retrieval, machine learning, image processing. And of course, like speech is not related to vision because it's kind of a different modality. And we do have some overlap with robotics as well, where vision plays a very important role. Now, visual perception is very important for computer vision because visual perception tells us like what is happening in our in our surroundings, and we can observe like different objects which are present in this 3D environment. So to understand this, we can ask like a lot of different questions which are actually quite interesting. So the first question here I'm showing you is like the objects which we are seeing in our 3D environment, are they really present there or not? So the other question is, can we see like without being aware of what we are seeing? And another relevant question to this is, if we are seeing something, does that mean that we are actually forming any visual perception or not? And this happens a lot. I mean, sometimes your eyes are wide open and you're just looking at something, but your brain is not processing anything, and you are unaware of what's happening in your surroundings. Okay, so the other thing is why these objects which are present like in a 3D environment, they appear to be colored. So these are some interesting questions which are related to visual perception, which we try to answer. Now, let's first try to understand the definition of visual perception. So by definition, it's a process of acquiring knowledge about our environment. And there might be like different objects, different events happening. So we want to extract like some semantically meaningful information from these objects, from these events, as like the light is emitted by these objects. And there could be like reflection coming out of these objects. So that light and reflection is actually used to perceive these objects and make interpretation about them. So this visual perception, there are multiple steps. The first step is vision, then there's some cognitive activity happening, and then there's the acquisition of knowledge. Now, if you compare this with like how we take photographs, so there is some analogy there. And in the figure here on the top, you can see that it's model of an eye. And for example, we have this object, a tree present there. So when some light is being like reflected by this object, it passes through the lens. Inverted image is formed of this object on the retina, and then our brain process that image and make interpretation such as like this object is a tree. Similarly, we have a camera. We have the same object tree here, and the light which is reflected by this object, it's passed through the lens of the camera, and an inverted image is formed in the film of the camera. And this process is just like capturing the visual information. It doesn't give like any interpretation which object is present, which is actually very important. So regarding that visual perception, this is a very interesting cartoon. You can see here, one person is actually seeing something and he's asking like the other person to be careful about that. And the other person is arguing that he can see it, he's not blind. Now the argument here is, whenever you're watching something, it doesn't mean you're perceiving it. Okay. So to make it more clear, let me show you this example. Now, if you carefully look at this, initially you will just see like there are a bunch of dots out there, and then your brain will try to like interpret what's present in this image. It will try to form some kind of interpretation, right? It will try to create some objects, and it will be difficult for some of you. I think it might be pretty easy. You can see like what's out there. But if I show you this image, then you can easily say that, okay, a dog is present in this image and the dog is sniffing the ground. Now, if I show you this image again, then without the boundary, all of you can easily interpret, and you can see that a dog present in this image, which was actually very difficult when I haven't shown like this red boundary over the dog. Okay, so that kind of explains like it's not just what you're seeing, but whether you are interpreting it correctly or not. So that completes the whole process of visual perception. Now, let's try to compare computer vision with human vision. Now, in human vision, we have eye as a sensing device, and then we have our brain, which performs like all the interpretation. For example, in this particular image, our brain can easily tell us like, okay, what different objects are present. It can tell, okay, a person is actually painting, so man is present, there's a trash can, there's a light bulb. So you can make like all those semantic interpretations. Similarly, in computer vision, we try to mimic that. And instead of eye, we have this camera, which will capture this visual information. And then we'll have computers like the computation power, which will try to make a semantic interpretation of whatever has been captured by this camera. And the goal is same, like, can we identify these objects present in this image? Now, this vision is actually a very important, is very important for us, like as a human being, because we day to day, like we perform a lot of visual tasks, and most of these like we are not very aware of. But if you think about this, if you don't have this vision, you'll not be able to navigate in your environment, right? You won't be able to avoid obstacles. So that's like a very important thing for us as humans, and that's just one thing. But again, there are a lot of different activities which we daily perform in our lives without without understanding that, okay, computer vision or visual perception is being taken into account or not, right? For example, all the time when we move in the environment, we try to recognize different objects present here, and sometimes we are focused if we see something new. But if it's something like we have seen before, then even like paying a lot of attention to that object, I mean, our brain does the processing, and we know that, okay, that object is present in that environment. So there are a lot of other visual tasks we perform daily, and the goal is like we want to transfer all these tasks to computers, and we want computers to solve them automatically. So that's the goal for computer vision. Given like any visual information in form of images or videos will have like these image pixels, we want to assign semantic meaning to those image pixels. Now, let's try to understand why it's so difficult. So if you look at this image as a human, we can easily see that there's a person reading a book, and in the background as well, we can see it seems like a crowded market area maybe. But let's try to understand what computers see in this image. So if you just focus on this yellow portion here, and if you try to zoom in into that, so these numbers are actually something which is seen by the computer when this image is being processed. And that's something like which makes it very difficult, because even as humans, if we just try to interpret what these numbers are, it's quite difficult for us. All right, so let's try to understand this representation of images, which is used by computers. So we call this digital image, and it's kind of sampling of like a continuous signal which is present in like 3D world. For example, if this is an image, so of course this image is like taken from like a real 3D world and 3D environment, right? So we have like everything. We have clouds, we have this greenery, then we have this person's arm over here. So the way we represent this image, which is called like digital images, we have this array, all right? And in this array, we have, let's say, x-axis and y-axis. So we'll have like certain number of columns, certain number of rows. And at each location, we'll have some value. So each image is represented in form of this array. And the value in this location actually represents what is being shown corresponding to that location in this image. All right, so let's try to understand this in more detail. So first of all, there are like two type of images, grayscale and colored images. We'll talk about colored images later. Let's first try to understand how grayscale images are represented. So what we do is we have that array, and each value or each pixel in that array is a number, and that number is between this range. It goes from 0 to this number. All right, I will explain what this is. Now, the A superscript over here, it's like bit level. All right, so for example, if your bit level is 16, so it will be like 2 raised to power 16, then -1. So that will be the maximum number you can have in your image. All right. Now, if you have like a higher bit level, which means that you can have a higher range of values in your image, which means that your image will be more detailed. But if A is very small, then you won't have like a lot of possible values which your image can take. So higher bit level means very finely like a defined image. But if a bit level is low, it means like it's kind of a coarse level. Right. So usually what we have is all the images which we capture these days using our phones, camera phones, it has a bit level of 8, which means that the range of this number will go from 0 to 255. Right? And in this case, 0 represents like completely black, which means nothing is present there. It's like a black color. And 255 represents white. So everything in between is kind of mix of black and white. So it's all right. So that's like one extreme. And this is like a very standard way to store images. Of course, we have like higher bits as well, because for some application, we need more details. But this is the most important one. The second is, let's say if A is equals to 1. So this is called like a 1-bit image. So if we use A equals to 1 in this particular equation, then you can say that the only possible values will be 0 and 1. Right? Which means that the pixels in that image, they will be either 0 or they will be 1. So it's kind of a binary image because you only have 2 values. So if you have a bit level of 1, that's called binary image. And if you have like a bit level which is more than 1, it's kind of grayscale image, because then you will have more details about each pixel. All right, so here are some samples, like it's the same image, but just different bit levels. On the rightmost side, you can see that the bit level is 2. So you will have like 4 different colors. If you put like 2 in this equation, we'll get like 0, 1, 2, 3. And this is a bit level of 3, and this is bit level of 8. So one thing you can observe is that when we have a bit level of 8, these will be like possible colors, and it's kind of more detailed as compared to the other two. All right, so then the question is like, why we need these like different bit levels if higher bit level is better? And of course, we always want higher bit level, but that comes with memory consumption, right? If you need bit level of 8, that requires a lot more memory as compared to bit level of 2. So that was all about grayscale images. Now let's try to understand how the colored images are formed. And it's actually pretty simple. If you have understood like how grayscale images are formed, RGB is like a straightforward extension. And in this case, what we have is, we have 3 different channels for each band. All right, so this is the RGB image, but exactly this is not like just one channel. We have 3 different channels for this. All right, so RGB, R stands for red, and this is green, and this is blue. And each of these images actually represented exactly the same way I described the grayscale image. All right, the only difference is, in that case, it was going from 0 to 255, representing white and all the way up to black. In this case, it's saying that, okay, no red, all the way up to like complete full red. All right, and this is for green, and this is for blue. So RGB image is nothing but 3 different channels. And when you combine these 3 together, this RGB image is formed. Okay, so let's try to understand a little more detail, like how these RGB channels work for us as humans. And we do have these cone cells, right? And these cone cells are like corresponding to either red, green, or blue. I will talk a little more about this in the next slide. So one thing to understand is light has a wavelength, and yeah, so this is an interesting fact. Like some people have 4 cone types, which means they can see like more colors. Some only have 2, which means they can see like fewer colors. So this is an interesting fact. So that's fine. So this color vision, it's a biological thing, right? It has been evolving like over so many years, million of years, in fact. And if you look at like the complete the wavelength band of light, the human vision like to which we respond is between 400 to 700 nanometer. Okay, so this is the wavelength where we see colors. This is like to which our human system actually responds. And all the way on this right, the 700, this is like corresponding to red. So that's what this plot is showing you. And it peaks at this location around like, I would say 560 or 570. And on the left, then we have this green. And then on the left, we have this blue. So this is like the patch of the wavelength band to which human vision responds. And that's how it's distributed. So there are like cones inside our fovea, which are actually responsible for this. And of course, man, if there's no light, there won't be any color. So light is making all this possible. And regarding grayscale, like we can only discriminate between bunch of grayscale values, but when it comes to colors, we can discriminate between thousands of different colors. And all that is like a credit to the cones we have in our fovea. Okay, so these cones are actually located right over here. And when light falls there, so depending upon like what wavelength it is, the cones respond. And of course, like we'll have different cones for different colors. For example, for red, we have almost like 64%, green 32%, and blue only about 2% of cones. Right. And the other important these perceivers, neo-perceivers we have, it's called rods. So as these cones are responsible for colors, these rods are like, they're important, and they allow us to like see like in a very dim light. And these are much more than like the amount of cones we have. This is roughly 120 millions. And these only like it's just as a grayscale image, like it will just say that whether something is present or not, and it won't discriminate between different colors. And as I said, like some humans only have 2 cones. And another interesting fact is like dogs also have just 2 types of cones. So those guys who have only 2 cones, their vision is like, we can say, same as like dogs. And the important part here is if you only have 2 cones, it means that you are only able to see like those colors, right, for which you have cones present. So for example, like if you just have red and blue, you will only watch those 2 colors. You will never watch green. All right, so the next part is we'll talk about like, I will try to give you some motivation why you should study computer vision. And of course, like this is just what I think. You can get motivated by many other factors as well. So the question is why you should study computer vision. So some reasons could be you find it interesting, you are curious like how computer vision works. It could be just a course requirement for you. And I think this is getting more important recently, like we have a very good job market out there for computer vision. Now, let me try to give like some of the other aspects. So computer vision, prior to 2012, mostly it was done in academics. Professors, like researchers, they were doing research, trying to understand how we can make like these computers see as humans. But it has changed, and all the big AI or tech companies, they are right now working on, not just working, they are doing research in computer vision, which is very, very interesting. So all of these companies, this is just a short list, but there are a lot of other companies out there, big companies, which are actually doing research. So, which is actually quite motivating, because then that opens up a lot of job opportunities for you as a student. And all this happened due to like emergence of deep learning. Most of you, I think, should be aware of that. And that was caused due to the advancement in hardware which we had. So it started like around 2012, and these days we have like a lot of these different kind of resources. GPU is just one. We have like cloud storages, and we have different like Amazon Web Services. We have like a lot of computing, like high powered computing resources. And so that's one thing, the computation aspect. The second aspect is the availability of large scale data, because a lot of this you will see is that whatever advancement we have like done in recent years, data has played a very crucial role there. Because to develop those AI models, we need lot of data. Because prior to 2012, people were trying to build classical algorithms for computer vision, and we will cover some of those as well. We'll see how that is very much relevant. And their data was not really important. It was like more of a subject expertise or your insights. They played a very crucial role. But once we have data, we try to get insights from data itself. So it's called like data-driven learning, and these are like some list of data sets which are a very large scale. We have ImageNet. I think this has around 14 or 15 million images. We have open images. Again, it's pretty huge. This YCC 100 million, the name says there are around 100 million images in this data set, and this is coming from Flickr. And that was like snapshot from 2014. And this one has roughly around 1 million videos as well. Then we have YouTube 8 million, we have Kinetics, Ava. So there's a long list. And these data sets are something which is actually fueling this research in deep learning and computer vision. Now, if you look at the market of computer vision, this is just like a projection. It's starting from 2016, you can see, and this is like in terms of millions in the y-axis, and it's like projected. You can see 2015, it's growing very rapidly, and it covers like all the three aspects: the software, the services, and the hardware. So we mostly will be, I think, interested in software because we are developing these AI algorithms. Services also play some role there, because the services will be based on actually the software which we develop or the AI algorithms which we are developing. Okay. Now, another interesting aspect I would like to share with you is, so what we do is when we do research, then we try to publish that work. And usually we do conferences or journals. And CVPR like is a top-notch conference in computer vision where we try to publish our papers. And this is like one way to show that why computer vision is so important. Now, if we look into engineering, all the engineering areas, not just like computer science or computer vision, like everything which is covered under the umbrella of engineering, then this conference, which is called CVPR, it's actually top ranked among all of those. And this also covered like advanced materials, which is a very important topic, right? And these, I will explain what these numbers are. And you can see like these numbers are way off, very high as compared to these like third or fourth rank. And again, these are AI conferences, third and fourth. So this H5 index says how many papers you have in past 5 years which have these many citations or more. And citations is something like when you publish a paper, then other people use your work and then do something else. Then they cite your work. So that's called citation. And each paper is counted as one citation. So it means that there are roughly 400 papers in this conference in the past 5 years, which have 400 citations or more. All right, so this signifies like how the field is rapidly growing in this area. And this is H5 median. This is again the same metric, but instead of like showing how many papers are about this is showing that all the papers which are more than this many citations, what's the median among those? So this is like close to 627. So there's a wide range there. So that was engineering. But another interesting thing you can see, this is like all the research, not just engineering, right? And in this one, again, CVPR, it stands at 4, which is quite interesting. And this includes like Nature and Science, all these top quality conferences and journals. Okay, so this is quite motivating if you are interested in like pursuing computer vision as research in future. And that could be like in industry, in academics, anywhere. And this is just showing like a stats, how it goes. I mean, it's not very easy to publish in these conferences. This is like from past years. The blue bar is showing like how many total papers were submitted. So in this, like it's close to 7,000. And this orange bar is showing you like how many were accepted. So the acceptance rate is like closely like 20-25%. So it's pretty hard to get papers accepted in this conference. Now, if you talk about like how popular this conference is, recently, like due to COVID, we don't have like many like a physical conference for this. I think 2020 and 2021. The last was 2019, and roughly I think 10,000 people were present in that conference. So it was really, really huge. And this year, I think it was a hybrid format. And you can see like in person, still, I mean, there's COVID, but still 5,000 people attended. And roughly 4,000 were attending virtually. Okay, and again, 8,000 papers were submitted, 2,000 were accepted. So this gives like an idea like how popular this thing is going to be. And you can see like this plot, it's growing up. And now I will briefly talk about what are the different applications where computer vision actually plays an important role. So I will show you some demo videos. You might have heard of like Amazon Go, and computer vision in fact plays a very important role here. So if you look at this video, so you can just go into a store, you have some kind of ID, you can scan it so that the store knows that, okay, you are present there, it will have all your details. And then you can just go there, pick up whatever you want, and you can just get out without paying anything, without scanning anything, right? So computer vision plays some interesting role here. And of course, it's not just computer vision, there are a lot of other factors involved. We have different sensors which are used in the products. But like analyzing when you're picking up something, who is picking up, facial recognition, then tracking, and all those are involved. So they are actually computer vision tasks. But this is, I think, really, really amazing. The other application I want to show you is, it's in, again, retail sector. So usually what we do, we go to like a clothing store, we try like different outfits and we see what suits us or what not. But what if like you don't have to do all that? You can just stand like in front of a mirror and it will do that for you like automatically. You can just choose like what you want to wear and it will show you like the virtual world of that. So it makes your life easier. And again, computer vision is playing a very important role. Yeah, this is, I think, one of the most important, and most of you know this, like how self-driving car works. And there's a lot going on in there, like when you have like this self-driving mode, it's not just computer vision. Again, there are like a lot of other things involved, a lot of other sensors, but computer vision again play a very, very crucial role here because you have like all these cameras set up on the street. You try to identify like what's present in the road, like if there are cars, how far they are, what's the speed, and then you have to identify the lanes and all that, right? So again, computer vision is enabling this kind of technology, which is, I think, very, very exciting. And again, like autopilot from Tesla, it's almost similar. We can skip this. We'll talk about different computer vision tasks, which are really important in computer vision and which are widely studied for this domain. The first task is object recognition. It is also called object classification, and you will see that both classification and recognition, they are used like and in same for the same term. And the idea here is, if you have an image, and this image might have some objects present in it. So the problem is, you'll have a set of categories and you have to predict whether any object category in that list is present in this image or not. So it's basically yes or no question for each category. Okay, for example, we have like a set of images here, and if the class we are interested is it's a person, then the question we'll ask is whether a person is present in this image or not. Right? So that will be, you can say, a person recognition problem. And of course, you can have multiple classes. For example, you can have tree as a class, you can have water as a class, and the question will remain same. The class category will change, whether that object is present or not. In some scenarios, you can see that you might have multiple objects. So we'll talk about that later, how to deal with it. But as long as the object is present, we just say that, okay, object is present, and there's a positive response from whatever AI model you have. Similarly, like if we again look at the same problem, whether a person is present in an image or not, if we have these set of images, the answer will be no, because we don't see any person like standing or doing something in these images. So that was the first task, and that's like the basic task in computer vision. The second problem is localization. It's called object localization, and we also call this object detection. And again, as we use like classification and recognition, like in similar terms, the same way we do for localization and detection. Usually, detection is a better word, which means that not only you will have to say that whether a particular object is present in an image or not, you will also have to locate it, and that's why localization. And you have to say that where exactly in the image that object is present. And this in a way also solves the issue which we just discussed in like a couple of slides back, like what if we have multiple instances of the same category, right? For example, if we have, let's say, two people here, two guys playing football. So if we just do classification, we will never know that, okay, two people were there. But if we have detection, we'll have to detect both the individuals present in that image. Okay. Now, there are different variations. Usually for object detection, we only do bounding boxes, which means that you will draw like a tight fit. Tight fit of the object, and you just draw like the bounding box, and usually it requires just 4 numbers, and those numbers could be either like center of the bounding box, so x and y's, and height and width of the bounding box. So that's one way. Or you can also save maybe like the extreme coordinates of the bounding boxes. It could be, let's say, left top of the box or right bottom of the box. Again, it will require 4 numbers. Okay, so there are different ways like how you can represent that detection. Now, so human detection, it's just like a subcategory of object detection. In this case, we are only interested in humans. For example, here I'm showing you 2 different samples. And again, on the right, it's like a ground view. And again, on the left, you can see that it's kind of an oblique view taken from maybe a drone or something. And again, both are doing human detection. And you can see the variation like in these 2 images. So it's basically due to the change in viewpoint. And that's why like even it's like the same problem, human detection, but you can like you can see that like how these 2 problems are like drastically different if you have to build an algorithm to solve this problem. Now let's move on to the a more complicated problem. So we talked about classification, we talked about detection, and so the next is semantic segmentation, and we are going up in the hierarchy of the problem complexity here. So semantic segmentation is, given an image, you have to tell what each and every pixel represents semantically. For example, in this case, you have this image on the right. So for each pixel, you will have to tell which object category this pixel belongs. Here you can see that like wherever you have green, it says that, okay, this pixel is a grass, right? And for example, if it's a dark blue, this represents this individual over here. And again, like a different instance of like a person, we have this little girl over here. So this is like a more complicated than detection, where we just have to detect like the bounding box. Here we have to give a semantic meaning to each and every pixel. Okay, so each detection, and then you can group those pixels together. I can say that, okay, which entity or which class this set of pixels actually belong to. And segmentation, you can have like some other variations. For example, in this case, you can say that, okay, what each pixel is, but then you can also go one step further and maybe try to define what is happening in the scene. For example, we know that, okay, all these pixels actually belong to this person, but then we also have a description saying that, okay, what this individual is actually doing, what kind of activity it's performing. So this is also called, maybe you can scene description, or you can, so some other variations are like, you can say image captioning, where you generate a caption for a given image, and that describes like whatever you see in that image. So it's again more complex than just semantic segmentation. All right, so let's move on. Now the second is the next step to semantic segmentation is, what if you want like fine-grained segmentation of different objects or different parts, different concepts present in an image. Okay, so this is again more complex than just semantic segmentation. Here, you're not just saying that, okay, this pixel belongs to an individual or a person. You're also trying to segregate like different parts of that individual, whether it's a face, whether it's a cap, whether these are like these pixels belong to hand or maybe some dressing, right? So it's like more fine-grained. Now, so those are like some classical problems we have in computer vision. Let's talk about like some of the other problems which kind of relates to all those fundamental problems, but they are actually different. For example, face recognition. And the idea here is you will have image of a frame, image of a person, and you have to identify like which individual that is. So even though this is face recognition, but if you want to correlate, this is exactly the problem which we discussed, like the first problem, which was object recognition, object classification, right? The only difference is in this case, all the images are faces, right? It's not that you have to recognize or discriminate between faces versus maybe some animals or some other object categories, right? The object category is not changing, but the identity of the individuals or identity of the face is changing. But again, the basic problem still remains like recognition or classification. And there are, of course, different variations of face recognition. One is like open universe face identification. For example, if you have a lot of faces and you want to like detect or identify a known face in all those faces present in the image. And this you might have seen like if you use Facebook or any other social media platform, then if you have like a group photograph, then Facebook can automatically identify those faces for you if they are like in your friend circle or any group. Okay, again, this is just a variation of the same problem. Another interesting problem which relates to faces is, can we also distinguish different facial expressions? Right? Sometimes we may be happy, sometimes we may be sad, we might be surprised. So can we identify those different expressions by just looking at the face? As a human, we can do, but can machines do it? And there is like a lot of application of that kind of problem. For example, like if we have to do fatigue detection, if a person is driving a car, and if we have a system which can automatically detect like, okay, a person seems like very tired, then we can alert him, maybe you should not drive anymore. So that's like one kind of application where it can be used. Okay, this is just showing like a simple demo of how this works. And again, like just focusing on image on faces, we can perform lip reading. For example, what if we have like a video of just the lip region and a person or individual is talking, then without the audio of that person, can we recognize what that person is saying? So again, that is a very interesting problem. And it can be very difficult for us as humans, but there are tasks like which are easy for AI and which are challenging for us. And we will briefly talk about that later as well, like which kind of tasks are actually easy for us and which kind of tasks are easy for a computer. And this is another example for the same category. Here I'm showing you like different videos from different locations, and these all are like crowded scenarios. So it doesn't always have to be like humans. We can have like crowd from cars, from vehicles, and on the right bottom you can see like we have a lot of fishes. Okay, so in this kind of scenario, again, problems could be like, first of all, can we detect like how many individuals or how many instances we have in this particular scene, right? So that's kind of crowd analysis. And then a more challenging problem will be, can we track each and every individual which is present in the scene? Or if it's like if it's car, then can we track those cars? Okay, so that's the first problem, where we have to count like all these individuals. And this is just showing like actual results of an algorithm which was developed at CRCV some years back, and it actually matches pretty well with the ground truth. And this is like a more crowded scene. Even this like AI system can do a very good job. This is even denser. Okay, so now moving on to like more complex problems. For example, in this scenario, like it's visual business recognition, and the idea here is, what if you are at a location and you have a camera and you're just capturing the video feed, right? But you don't know where exactly you are, and you want to know like what the store is. So if you just take a video or take a photo, then can we recognize like your location, or can we recognize like which store this is? And that can fetch you like a lot of other information, like what different items are available in this store, whether it's useful for you or not. And so some of biometrics we already saw, like face recognition and all those. And you have seen like this in real world as well. I mean, almost all of you might be using laptops, right? And you have your fingerprint scanner. So that's kind of a biometrics. And for that, you need like, you'll have to first capture that fingerprint, which is shown on the left here. And then you need an AI algorithm which can identify, okay, whether this fingerprint belongs to you or not. So that's like a real life example which you see daily. So that's today. But again, even like 20 years back, we had like the system of recognizing faces in cameras and recognizing smiles in cameras. So that's another interesting application, and a lot of like gaming scenarios you use today, and not just gaming, like for assistive living as well. Computer vision, like it's very important. So a lot of different variations of all the problems which we discussed today, they are being used there. Okay, so that was about images. We will continue to videos, and if you have any question, please let me know. So let's move on. So far we have seen that the different problems which can be solved like when we just have images, right? But if you think about this as a human, we are like observing our 3D environment, right? And it's not that we keep capturing like these images. It's kind of a continuous stream, and whatever formation is being like done in back of the retina, it's like continuous, right? It's kind of a sequential data, and you can compare that with a video. And video is exactly the same. You just don't have like one frame, you have sequence of frames. And like one important property which defines a video is the frame rate. And usually these days, like all the videos are 30 frames per second, which means that if you play a video, then in 1 second, there will be roughly 30 frames, right? So that's kind of optimal, and you can recognize like different motions without observing any jerk or like or discontinuing the motion. Okay, so video, it's nothing. If you think about like it's just, as I said, a sequence of frames, and you can actually analyze each and every frame independently. And usually, like in a lot of problems, people do that and then try to make inference about the video. But again, there are different techniques how we can infer information from a video. So let me give you some examples of what are the different tasks which can be solved using videos. And to start with, we have action recognition. So the idea here is, like, now instead of having an image and an object present, in this case, you have a video, which is again, as we discussed, sequence of frames, and some action might be happening in that video. All right, so the goal is to recognize which action is happening. So if you can correlate, this is like the basic problem remains the same. It's classification, or it's recognition problem, right? The same way we were trying to solve object recognition. In this case, we are solving action recognition. So at a high level, it's the same. Now, similar to the problem we had for objects, which was object detection, where we have to detect like different objects in in an image, we have action detection. And the idea here is, given a video, there might be multiple actions happening. So not only can we recognize those actions, but can we also localize where these actions are happening in that video. So in this case, it's like a very challenging case. It's a surveillance video and like multiple people walking. So it's showing that how they are detected, and we also know that which activity these individuals are performing. So it's much more challenging than just object detection or activity recognition. Now, moving ahead to like segmentation, same as we had like semantic segmentation in images, we can have video segmentation. And of course, there can be a lot of variations depending upon like the flavor of the problem. Here, I'm showing you like on the left, it's just showing you segmentation, but it's not like complete segmentation. It's trying to track objects. And the idea here is like, let's say if you know in the first frame what different objects are present, can you track them across time and also segment at the same time? Okay. And the same problem on the right, you can see the video. We have those two parrots, right? We know that we want to track these two parrots in the whole video. And this is the result like from one of the work which we had like, I think a couple of years back. Now, if we had to do semantic segmentation in videos, which will be actually quite challenging, the difference will be you will also be interested in like the person who is playing with the parrots, right? You want each and every pixel of that individual to say, okay, this is a person. And you can assume that the complexity will be much more than this. Now, some other variations of problems in videos. And again, this is true for images as well. This is called like cross reaction synthesis. This is like some work which we did like last year. It's actually quite interesting. The idea here is if you have a video in which a person is performing some action, now can you synthesize or generate a video of the same action from a different viewpoint, right? And the problem actually also translates to images, where like if you have a image of an object from certain viewpoint, can you synthesize it from a different viewpoint? So the problem remains the same, it's cross-view synthesis, but in this case, it's actions, and due to action, there is motion, which makes it more complicated. Okay, so again, this is like a detection of objects in videos, but this is like aerial videos. And you can see here that this is like far more challenging than if we'll have videos from the ground. Even as a human, like it's very hard to actually localize those vehicles there. Right, so that was detection. And the next step will be, okay, we have detected, but can we track them? So these are some samples of tracking. So in this case, we are not just only detecting like these vehicles, but we are also trying to track them over time. For example, if in case like we have a long video. And again, this is like this is challenging, but again, this is not like the most complex case of tracking. So a more complex case will be like something like this when it's crowded, of course. And even in this case, you can see that like you have this overbridge, right? And then some vehicles going under that bridge. So this is more challenging because some of the vehicles, they are actually being occluded by that bridge. And then when they're coming out of that bridge, again, you have to track them, which makes it like even more challenging. So crowd is one scenario. Okay, so then the question will be, okay, all right, we have a video, we can detect, we can track, but what's the real life like application for that, right? So it could be like security, and it could be like we want to monitor like some kind of environments. It could be shopping malls or any other train stations. And the idea here is, again, you will not only have like a video feed from one of the viewpoint, you might have several cameras placed. Right? So the more complex form of tracking will be you're observing one individual in one of these cameras. So you will have to detect it, but then that person will disappear and might again reappear in any other video stream. So then can you track across time? So that also makes like tracking a little more complicated. Okay, so that's all about different problems. And of course, that's not like a comprehensive list. That was just to give you an idea of like what we study in computer vision, what kind of tasks we do, and how those tasks are actually related to real world applications. Now, moving forward, let's try to understand if we have an image, what can be a very basic or simple algorithm which can be used to detect objects in an image. Okay. So it's a very, very simple approach, very basic approach. People used to do this maybe 30, 40 years back. And let me run you through this. So the problem is we have this image, and this is image of a chair, and this is like the object we are interested in. And what we want to do is we want to detect this chair in the sample image. All right. So as a human, it's pretty simple, right? I can say that, okay, this is the image and that's the bounding box. I can do it. But how will a computer or an AI algorithm will do it? So let's try to understand a very basic algorithm for this. Now, what we can do is we can take this chair as a template and say that, okay, this is our prior knowledge and we know that a chair looks like this. And we can try to place this chair in each and every location of this target image. So let's say this is the starting point. Right? And then what we will do is we'll try to match pixel-wise how similar this patch is with this template. Okay, a simple way to do that will be, so now you know that how a RGB image is represented. So what will happen is for this particular template, you will have just 3 different arrays, right? And each array will be for either R, G, or B. So it's basically like a 3-dimensional matrix. And let's say if a number of pixels in this or height or width of this template is, let's say roughly 100 pixels and maybe 50 pixels. So you will have 3 different matrices or 3 different arrays, and each array will have the bunch of numbers representing those pixels. And each channel will have roughly like 100 times 50 values. Okay, so all that we have, and same amount of data we will have on this patch as well. So what we can do is we can try to compare each and every value. So for example, starting from the top, so we'll have 3 values at that location, right? We can do point-wise comparison of those 3 values with the 3 values present here. And we can take maybe a simple distance between, we can just subtract them, and then we can just take an average. That will give you like a good estimate of how close these 2 patches are. Okay, and that will then give you just one number, whether they are similar or not. And then you can do that for all the possible locations. So the distance metric, which I just explained, you can say that that's kind of a correlation. We'll talk about correlation later in the course, but right now just try to don't get confused. It's just a measure like how similar these 2 patches are. If you understand that, that's enough for now. All right, and it will give you a number. The number will be high if they are very similar. The number will be low if they are not similar. So for each location, if you try to estimate that number, you will get something like this. And the dark regions are saying it's not similar. The light regions are saying it's kind of similar. And here you can say that at this particular location, you have a very high value, which means that very high similarity. And we can use that estimate to say that, okay, this chair is actually present at this location. So this could be a very, very simple algorithm, and this is kind of performing object detection for you. Okay. Okay. All right. So now the question is, can we improve this? And of course, we will talk about a lot of interesting and more advanced algorithms in the course later. But let's try to touch upon another basic method which can be used to solve this problem, which again is not like state of the art method, but which tries to overcome some of the limitations which we have in this algorithm. All right. So the idea here is, and again, this is related to what Shishir, you were saying, that if we have like different lighting condition or a different chair, then the pixels will not match. So that's the basic idea. Like comparing pixel to pixel is not a good idea, because pixels will change color, and even though like your objects are not changing. Okay. So then that's the motivation. So what's the next best thing we can do? Now, what we can do is, instead of comparing pixels, we can maybe try to compare patches. All right. And the idea is we take like small patches and we try to extract some meaningful features from those patches. We'll talk about features a lot in this course. Right now, you don't have to worry about all this. Just try to understand that given a small patch of image, you have a way to represent that patch in form of numbers, and which is way different from just pixel value. Okay, so that's the high level idea. And all these different algorithms, which are feature representation algorithms, they try to do that. Okay, so the idea is given a patch, you try to represent that using a features, and then you can divide your image into multiple small patches and just fill them in a bag. And this is called like bag of words representation. And the idea here is, for example, if you will have like, let's say face, and you try to create patches, then you might have patches for eyes, nose, lips, and all these small features, right? And then you can just put them in a bag. It's just like a group of patches. And now what you will do is instead of comparing pixels, you will try to compare whether you have these patches present or not. Okay, so this is like better than just comparing raw pixels. All right, so yeah, this is just showing like one analysis of how this bag of words is actually meaningful. So what we do is we are trying to extract like these patches from this image, which we call code words, and this is like our bag of patches. And this is a histogram which is just showing that okay, this particular feature, how many times this feature is actually occurring in this image. So that's just a count, which is showing the frequency, the y-axis, and these are different patches. Like for example, like if it's an image of a car, you might have like some patch for wheel, and ideally what will have if it's a car, then your patch for wheel should say that okay, there are 4 different patches in the input image, and in comparison to let's say a motorcycle where you will only have 2. So that's like a high level idea how this bag of words histogram will work, and that way you can distinguish between motorcycles versus cars, because there might be like a lot of other features which are actually quite similar in motorbikes and cars. Okay, so that's just showing you a bag of word representation. All right, so yeah, we briefly touched upon this. Let's talk about it in more detail. There are tasks which are actually very easy for us as a humans to solve, and there are tasks in which like computers are actually very superior. Okay, so let's briefly touch upon this. And again, we don't know the exact answer, which tasks are actually easy, which are difficult, but we'll just try to touch upon this and give you some examples. For example, if this is an image, and as a human, I will ask you to just count like how many people are present in this crowd. I mean, it will take you a lot of time, right? Maybe hours just counting the heads. But that's not the case for a computer. If computer like the algorithm is like very well in just counting the heads, it can do it pretty quickly, right, within seconds. So this is like one task where you can say that okay, it could be very challenging for us, but pretty simple for computers. But again, I'm not saying that computer might be very perfect. It could be that we are taking 2-3 hours, but we are better than computers. But again, it took us 2-3 hours. So that's a point of comparison. All right. So the high level idea is if we distinguish tasks as let's say global versus local, then local tasks are actually easier for computer and global tasks are easier for us as humans. So let me try to differentiate between these two. Global task is something like a high level interpretation of the given problem. All right. For example, let's say if I just ask you, given an image, like which objects are present, or can you describe like what these individuals are doing? So you can quickly analyze that image or a video, right, and quickly say, okay, what is happening. But that kind of task is very difficult for computers because that requires analyzing and the interpretation part, right? So that's where the AI actually lacks a lot. Contrast to that, if we look into local tasks, where it's just about like maybe comparing features or doing some kind of similarity in a local neighborhood. So those local tasks are actually easier for the computer. And counting heads was like one such task because it's just about like we will have some set of features for those heads, right? So all computer has to do is like try to match those, and it doesn't matter like whether there are thousands of heads or like many heads, right? It can just match it pretty quickly. But for us, we'll have to like go and count each and every head, right? So that's kind of tedious. So which makes it difficult. So I think this is the last segment of this introductory lecture we have, and I will give you a brief history of like where computer vision was when it started and where we are today. Now, roughly 50-60 years when it all started, like if we have like something like this, I mean, this was too big for computers. I mean, because this is like so many pixels, it's a high resolution image, it's colored image. So we didn't have like any capability to even process or store these kind of images, right? So that was the state. And then it started improving, and this is roughly like 25 years ago. If you have to perform object detection on this image, again, it was very challenging. We had algorithms like template matching and sliding window, which we briefly discussed today, like bag of words, all those algorithms. And the best AI algorithm would have done something like this, detecting like car in the sky and all these things. Now it improved a lot. And I think roughly 15 years ago, you all know, like in the cameras, we had like face detection, all that. So then even like today, when I showed you this like slide earlier, we have algorithms which can detect like which can count individuals in such a challenging scenarios, which is a very crowded scene. So this is again just one example. Of course, there are a lot of other advancements which are being done in computer vision. And deep fakes, you all know that like it's very easy for you to like transfer like audio from one person to another, or just like visualize or create a video which actually is not present there, which is again it's very dangerous. It might be useful in some scenarios where we need video synthesis, but it could be very dangerous as well for the society. But this is something like what we can do today. Okay, so we can skip that. Yeah, so I think that's all I had for this first lecture. And before we switch to the second lecture, which is linear algebra basics, we'll be taking some questions if you have any.